Don't think we need a roll call, but if anybody insists, have whatever 4:32 or somewhere around that time. All right. Anybody from the public? Sheila, you want to say anything?
No, I don't want to say anything. Very good to see everybody yet again.
Okay. All right, approval of the minutes. Has everybody had a chance to review the March 20th meeting minutes? I'm sure they were, as usual, Joanne captured everything appropriately.
She is very good at doing that.
Who's doing it? Where is she today?
Joanne is not feeling well today,
Oh,
so she sends her regrets.
Okay. So, do anybody want to make a motion then to approve the minutes of March 20th?
We approve the minutes.
All second. Okay, great. Anybody opposed? Glenda? All right, all in favor say aye. Those opposed? Motion passed to accept the minutes. The accessions today.
Thank you.
Elizabeth.
I don't have a ton today. The first thing on the list is there was a bunch of books that had been deaccessioned many, many years ago.
So I can fill in a little more of the backstory on this. There was a very young green archivist that worked for the museum back in 1996.
Is he still here?
He is in fact still here, yes, but he's no longer the archivist. He's now the director.
They got rid of him. Did they get rid of him?
He did a lot of deaccessioning of books, and there were some that he thought better of and set on a back shelf to sort of figure out what to do with later, and they sat there for a very long time. Until Elizabeth came along and said, "What are these books doing here?" And I said, "Oh yeah, those are ones I thought we should probably not get rid of after all." So that's why we are now seeing them come back for recommendation to be reinstated into the collection.
Yeah, so I went through all the books, and these are the ones that I agreed with Eric. I think I agreed with everything that you had said, like, oh, let's reinstate. Things that had a connection to Longmont. There were some Bibles that, albeit they're very large, like there's one that's Norwegian, and there was a Norwegian immigrant group here in Longmont, so it makes sense to have that representation. So yeah, so we're just looking for a vote to put them back into the collection.
And we might do that as a separate vote, just since it's a little different than a standard accession. Just a vote to reinstate.
Yeah.
So what, a motion, is that what you want?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, who's running the meeting?
Well, Allie's here, so we're gonna let her take over.
Tom is gonna step aside.
Obviously, we're on the agenda on item number 5.
And have we voted yet on the standard accessions?
Nope.
We've only looked at this one?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So do we have a motion to reinstate these books as part of that session?
I'll motion to reinstate the books.
Do we have a second?
I have a question. How large was the Norwegian community in Longmont?
They had the Visby Church out in Hygiene, and I think there was a Lutheran church here that had a pretty sizable Lutheran community. I don't know numbers wise. Do you?
And it wasn't the largest of the immigrant groups, but Scandinavian as a whole, probably third or fourth largest among the ethnic groups that came into this area.
And when did they come into this area?
Late 1800s.
Late 1800s. Okay.
Yeah, Bethlehem Lutheran is an amalgamation of the Norwegian and German
Oh,
Lutheran
Mhm.
churches.
Norwegian had changed its name, but I didn't know.
Yeah, I
which
think it
one.
was in 36 they switched to English.
Wow.
Yes,
So they were Norwegian for a while.
they were.
Nineteen thirty-six, they switched it.
Yeah.
That's great.
And then do we wanna do a vote on whether, to do the succession? All in favor? Okay, unanimous?
Thank you. There is only one item to vote on for complete new sessions here. And that is this.
That's cool.
So this is a large mural. I would say the bottom piece is longer than this table, about just a little taller. And then the top piece actually sits on top of the darker piece on the bottom. And I kind of put the two pictures like this. They've been hanging at the youth center for almost 30 years now. The top piece, they were on separate walls, that's why they're separate pictures. It's so big that they didn't have a space there to put them in the way that they were originally intended. This was part of a project in the 90s to fight gangs and violence among youth, particularly in the Hispanic community in the 90s, kind of mid to late 90s. And a woman who is, she's still around, but she works up in Fort Collins, Dr. Kelly, Dr. Norma Huerta Kelly. She is a psychology professor at the university up there. This was one of her first jobs, was hired. She raised money. They worked with professors at CU. I guess they were weekly. They've also worked with this guy, Leo Tanguma, who is known around here for doing the murals at the airport. This is before he did those. They were able to contract him to work with the youth to create a mural to basically process what they were going through. So the bottom are sort of like temptations, the things that they could fall into, the kind of like the bad things. It's pretty dark. It's kind of hard to tell here, but there's like teen pregnancy. There's drugs and alcohol interpreted at the bottom. And then the top is kind of everything that kind of gives them the hope to uplift them away from that stuff. So there's portraits of family members, some family members who had passed away by then. Some of the youth that worked on this in the 90s are no longer with us. And some of them are, including Gamma Acosta, who has done one of the murals downtown. His name is on this. I haven't been able to contact him. I've been trying to contact him. I've got his phone number now. Tried email, tried Instagram, so I'll kind of give him a call. And there's, elements of Catholicism in this, and obviously most of the names are Hispanic. It was also a joint effort with Longmont Police, so there was sort of that element too. So I think this is a really interesting piece to sort of represent the 90s and the relationship with the Hispanic community and what it meant to be a young person here at that time and in that community. So yeah, they were renovating their building and this had to come down and they asked us if we wanted it. And after doing some research, I think it's something that's worth potentially exhibiting, especially as we probably potentially will be interpreting the 90s in our history exhibit.
So, but Gamma was one of the teen youth who did this?
You can't quite see, but there's a bunch of signatures on like the feathers and in the very end corners of the mural that have been cut off in the photo.
Do we have any other questions at this item?
Do we have any immediate plans for it, or?
It's just at the MCC right now. We might display it during Day of the Dead.
Right.
There was talk of maybe even doing a reunion with those who worked on it. Dr. Huerta Kelly is interested in that, so we'll see.
Do we have a motion?
Is this the only
It's the
accession?
only accession.
No. Well, I'll move to acquire the, this mural.
Do we have a second?
A second.
All in favor?
Aye.
It's unanimous.
And then we have deaccessions.
So a little explanation, I don't know that this board has, at least everyone on the board has done a deaccession, but basically it's the opposite of an accession. It's removing something from the collection. And it actually requires a higher standard instead of just a majority vote. It's a 2/3 vote to remove something from the collection.
So we have had this collection of documents relating to an Artemis Hyde of upstate New York. His great-great-great-great-granddaughter, Barbara Hyde, was a prolific writer in the Longmont Times in the mid-20th century. I think she was a much beloved community member, and she had donated these likely to the library, and then when the library collection merged with the museum collection in the 90s, this came along with it. It shows up in an inventory in 1999, so it's been here for 25 years at least, and probably longer. We went through it. There's like one document that relates to Colorado, and even that is Greeley. What it seems to be is mostly legal paperwork. Artemis Hyde seemed to be a lawyer who signed off on a lot of legal, like sales of land is one of the most common type of documents in here. All relating to mostly property in this upstate New York area, sort of, I think it's somewhere in like the Finger Lakes region. And I already contacted a archive out there who would love to have this. I think it makes more sense there from, you know, anyone who's doing research on property or family members who lived in that area. They're not going to be coming to Longmont, Colorado. And it's also like older. I mean, it's mostly 1840s to 50s. So it's before the sort of settlement of Longmont anyway. So I would like permission to send these to New York, to a different archive.
Did you donate, did the donor donate anything else? Is this part of a larger collection, or is this just a discrete, separate collection?
As far as there isn't any real documentation. It was in boxes when I arrived in '96, and my understanding was that this was everything that she had donated.
That you donated.
And there's no real records of the donation.
So she did not donate her own personal papers having the family history
No.
dealing with Longmont? This is just
That
legal papers dealing with bills of
Generations
sale.
back.
Yep.
And you know, it's not uncommon to get offers like this even today, where someone who lives here now has generations ago things that of someone who had no connection with Longmont, like they came here in college or something, and this is the stuff that their great grandparents from Iowa. Like I've fielded a lot of these type of requests, and you know, nowadays with the internet, it's really easy to just like look up like, hey, there's a local historical society, maybe you should contact them. But in the past, it was like, oh yeah, these are old, they should go somewhere special, and you know, they took them because they knew it was special and she was an interesting person, but it doesn't make any sense. And I think, Eric, you said no one's ever requested
No,
these documents.
in all the years, I think the only time was her and her family called once and like, are things still there? It's like, yep, they're still in the boxes. And they were like, okay, you know, so.
We're gonna get rid of them.
I would let them know that these are going to go to New York so that if they did need to do research, they could always go there.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was my question.
Because
Are we going to notify them?
Barbara Hyde has passed away, the woman who
Yeah.
we think donated them, but
And if I recall, her children do not live in Colorado. I think they're like California and Washington State or something. They're not local either at this point.
Do we have any other questions? there
No.
a movement to support the deaccession?
I'll move that we send these boxes to New York.
Is there a second? All in favor? It's unanimous. Awesome.
And there is one more. I think it makes sense to vote on these separately since they require such a vote. This is a slew of books donated by Kent and Nancy Brown. Eric, you said these were the former directors?
Kent was museum director when I started here.
Yeah.
He's still alive, lives in Fort Collins now. But I don't think he even recalls that he donated 1960s cookbooks. I'm sure he was cleaning off his cookbook shelf.
They're very fun, but what the collection committee decided is that these might make more sense. We have a collection of sort of reference books on antiques and various things like that over at the MCC. And so right now these are in the archive and they're getting sort of a level of care that this, things that have relations to Longmont are getting. These are nationally published books. They're available online easily. You'd probably pick any of these up for a couple of bucks at a used bookstore. So we're suggesting moving these from the permanent collection into a more like reference type use over at the MCC. So if we do any kind of programming or something.
I'm sorry, what's the MCC?
Oh, the offsite collection storage.
Oh,
Museum Collections Center. That's what it sounds.
well, why hold on to them at all?
That was something we talked about.
If there's so many copies out there.
I think mostly the thought is if we were to ever do an exhibit of, the 1960s or something, they're just a quick handy reference. And, certainly if we decide in a few years, these are not materials we really need. Once they've been deaccessioned, then we can easily just say, these are no longer, we don't need these reference materials.
I wouldn't have to come to you guys.
Right.
Your majority vote here, right?
Yes, you would.
Yeah. It's a job for a future board.
That's right. Wow.
And we know, I assume that there's not any Longmont residents that submitted recipes.
We have other types of books like this that do have Longmont submitted recipes. That's something for sure we would keep in the archive.
And there's no marginalia in any of these.
I don't think so.
Well, this is not really a deaccession, this is just a relocation,
I mean, it is.
a reassignment.
We would do it as a deaccession because once they're moved into the reference collection, then, we're no longer treating them as part of our permanent collection. We're treating them as reference books. If we were to decide we want to display one page, we could cut that page out and put it on the wall, like that. So we really would be changing their whole status as their level of care and things like that.
So then you could just toss them if you want.
Right, and we could toss them if
Exactly.
we decide.
Right.
These really aren't useful.
Right.
Are there any other questions about this collection? Do we have a movement to deaccession these?
So moved.
Do you have a second? All in favor? Unanimous?
Great. And that's it.
Well done.
Alright, moving on to,
You've had some stuff where you've acquired something where they had recipes back.
We voted on a very old, like maybe 1890s, 1900s cookbook that
Right.
had submitted recipes. Super interesting.
Yeah, really interesting.
And that one had handwritten recipes as well, and it had advertisements for Longmont businesses throughout it. So that is now in the collection, in the archive, cataloged.
Was it a German family or?
It was. We're not sure who. It seemed like it's almost like all the business people kind of came together because I actually put in all of the businesses that were listed into the record and all of the people who submitted. and it would be like AC Atwood, Mrs. AC Atwood, and then Atwood owned a dry goods store. Well, I'm just making things up, but like it was one of those things that the dry store owner's name would be on the advertisement, and then the wife submitted a recipe on the next page.
Oh.
So I think it
Really
was
interesting.
a way to promote local businesses around here.
Right.
Mhm.
Well, we will not deaccession them.
Oh, just a session. It's got to stay for a couple of years.
Sure.
Move on to reports. So sent out in the email was the director's report for March, April, since we didn't have a meeting in April. And then I handed out today the preliminary report for April, May. We're a little behind on our reports, so this is kind of incomplete. We don't have everything in here, but I just thought I would get a few highlights of the last month. So the Stewart family courtyard, after the meeting, if anyone would like to stay and get a quick walk around of the courtyard, it is getting very close to done. Should be hopefully pretty much wrapped up by the end of May. There's a few things that will hang over into June, and we're going to let the sod and the plantings get well established before we release the hordes into them. So it'll be September before we have our first event out there.
Are you pleased with it?
Yeah. I think it's much larger than I had realized. I mean, when you stand out there, you go, wow, this is so much bigger than the old courtyard. And so I think we will have opportunities to bring in, bigger name groups and hopefully really be able to draw.
Maybe some national acts too.
Maybe it all takes the funding to pay them, but yeah, certainly groups that before we would have said, they're too big for our courtyard now. I think we can accommodate. So
Great.
excited about that. The 2024 city budget requests, I have submitted them to my boss, Jeff Friesner, with Recreation and Culture. Most of our ongoing requests do relate to the expansion of the museum. So we are requesting one new position, an assistant curator of exhibits, since the majority of the expansion is relating to exhibit galleries. We're also requesting additional funds to rent traveling exhibits. And then we have our largest request is a one-time request, which tend to be a little easier to get funded. So we've applied for a $250,000 grant that would fund the construction of our new children's gallery, so staff and supplies and so forth for that. But we won't hear about that grant until August. And if we didn't get the grant, we really don't have time to turn around and reapply before the building is open. So we're asking the city to basically backstop that, because the city budget isn't final until late August, and they usually announce the grant in early August. So we could say either, we didn't get the grant, we really need that backstop, or got the grant, you can release that money for other uses. But if you happen to talk to any city council members, particularly the assistant curator of exhibits is probably the most critical position that we have, because given that we're adding another gallery, basically increasing the size of our exhibit galleries by a third, and we have 2 staff right now to service those galleries. So really essential position.
So what is the dollar figure? If you put it all together for the increase, I'm just curious.
So
Besides
total
the 250
besides the 250,
and the assistant job.
it's about 125,000 with the assistant curator and the additional exhibit rental fees, and then there's a number of smaller requests that are basically kind of cost of doing business requests, like postage is going up, things like that. So the assistant curator, that alone is around 100,000 between salary and benefits.
And, so say hypothetically, what's your inflation factor for next year? Say you weren't asking for anything extras, and say you wanted, this year it's 100,000, hypothetically, 100,000. Would next year be 125?
So we
without
work,
doing anything different?
we work with the HR department, and so they've benchmarked that position based on current rates, but then, they are working now on what that increase will be. Last year it was about 4%. So, we don't know what it will be this year, but that's basically determined by HR. We don't have control over that part.
Okay.
In the
Well, can I ask a question?
Yeah.
The city is probably doing pretty well now, with all those use fees, they're building all over the place. There must be use fees and everything else must be pouring in.
Longmont
to
is
the city
certainly
coffers.
doing much better than, say, Loveland, which has got some problems and is having to make pretty major cuts. But Longmont, like every other community, is facing the challenges of inflation and trying to catch up with, the years of inflation. So,
What does that mean? Salaries and benefits?
salaries, benefits, general supplies.
Utilities.
And one of the biggest ones has been construction costs.
Infrastructure.
So, they're doing a major renovation of the Safety and Justice Center, police and fire and courts and all of that. And that has been about a 2-year delay as they go out to bid, and it's so far over that then they have to find additional money, and so they go out to bid again. And once again, it's over, and so then they have to find more money. I think they've finally now pieced together enough money to start construction on that. But so the city manager has certainly said this is not a flush year. This is not a year where we're going to be giving lots of things out. But he is very aware that we are the only expansion that is happening in the city. There's renovations, certainly in other facilities, but we're really the only facility that is expanding right now because we have private funding, and that's also been a concern of the Stewart Family Foundation. The major donor is, well, how is the city contributing to this project? Because they're contributing by far the majority of the total costs, and the city's contribution is pretty small, and so they've been in conversation with the city manager about how does the city contribute, and that's basically been his response. Well, we will be contributing ongoing dollars, which in the long term will cost more than the one-time capital fund. But there's also a lot of other needs in the city, so being able to advocate, which is not something I can do. I cannot advocate to city council, but the advisory board is, that's one of the responsibilities of the board, is to advise city council on museum operations. So whether that's individual conversations or going to city council and appearing at public invited to be heard, those are certainly options that are open to you all to mention the needs of the museum and the budget going forward.
All right, so when Susie arrives, we'll tell her we need an assistant curator for exhibitions.
Yes, yes.
That's the first thing. That's the first thing we'll say if she wants to.
So our city council liaison is Susie Hidalgo Faring, and unfortunately, she usually works until about 5, so she's usually arriving shortly.
Well, Eric, I know we can't, or you can't lobby city council, and you said we can, but there should be some way that we can organize behind the scenes with your help.
So,
So that we have
certainly
a
outside of
script
a
to
public
use.
meeting, I'm happy to talk with you
But I
about
mean, you know, we
that.
could, you could.
Strike that from the minutes.
If we- But I'm just saying, if I happen to have a conversation with you,
But yeah,
just
yeah,
you and
happy
I,
to-
and
happy
then
to
Bruce
talk
has
with you.
one
Right,
separately
right.
somewhere down the road, and then Linda,
Right.
I mean,
Well, I mean, for the ballot measure that was on last year, like when we went to city council, there were certainly boards that got together, they wrote a letter of support.
mhm.
And then one person from the board went and presented it, and I think that is something that all
Yeah,
of us
that's what
could
we should
do.
do.
Through email, we could draft a letter together, and then if someone is able to go to city council, can present it with the full support. I think that for me, was very convincing when I saw other boards had the ability to say, not only do I support this as a citizen, but we have the unanimous support of our board. So I think that is something that would definitely be worth.
That makes a lot of sense. I like that.
Other questions about the administration report?
And before we leave that though, so I guess we would need to know the right time to go to council. We don't wanna go too early, we don't wanna go too late, like at the last minute, but,
Right,
you know,
I
so we
would
would need
say,
some guidance there.
yeah, I mean, generally, you know, the city manager presented kind of the initial budget message at Tuesday's city council meeting.
This coming Tuesday,
Last
Tuesday.
yesterday. So I think, you know, the decisions are going to be made over the coming months, and then presented to city council at the end of August.
So the end of August, that's
Um,
what I'm just trying to get is.
The museum will be
Timelines.
at city council May 28th. We are doing a promotion for our Lego exhibit, where each city council member is gonna get their own little minifig, little Lego person, that's dressed to look like them.
Uh-oh.
And so that could be.
I don't know if that's gonna go over well.
And I was talking to Councilmember Chris today. She was excited about it, so I think that could be an opportunity to appear, invited to be here that day. Some boards have managed to get on the council agenda. I think that's pretty much the council liaison has put that forward. As a possibility, I know the library board and the senior center board have both been able to go as part of an agenda item. That is up to council and the city manager to schedule those.
Well, I know you were very helpful when I went, you know, with a lot of information, just to kind of remind them of what we actually do out here.
Yeah.
Because we can't always assume, as we know, that they know.
Right. They have so many things
Exactly.
on their plate that I think, you know, the power of the citizens coming to the council meeting is pretty significant.
Is there any information about art public places? Doesn't the museum run that now?
We do, yes. Art in public places is funded through a 1% for art set aside on all capital projects. And because there's been a lot of capital construction, particularly related to flood recovery, they are actually trying to spend down their fund balance. They're in a little different position in that they don't have to go to the city for requests. They basically have a fund that is established to provide art to the citizens. Right, well, I'm going to move on, talk a little bit about some of the other things in the director's report. Collections, Elizabeth, I don't know if there's anything you would like to highlight
I've
this?
been making a lot of presentations, fielding a lot of donations. Lots of people have been coming into the museum or calling the museum for photos for all these businesses opening. You know, oh, I want to put historic buildings on the wall, historic photos on the wall. So we've had a couple of those this past month.
Are these restaurants or?
Yeah, so like there's a pizza place going in 325 Main. He purchased almost $400 worth of scans of historic images of his.
325.
Yeah, it's a little white. It's about the fifth building in from, if you count the Imperial Hotel as one. Little tiny spot.
Okay.
Currently runs a pizza place in Estes. Tony's Pizza.
Okay.
And then one of the banks, High Plains Banks, also purchased prints for their office. And we might be showing some photos at the new food hall.
Yeah.
It's like a temporary exhibit. People coming in to do research on their homes. That's been a fairly popular request as
Yeah, I
well.
did that, yeah.
Yeah.
Really fascinating.
Yeah.
Yeah. I only got up to the mid-50s.
You realize how much movement is happening downtown, because a lot of the requests, like just today, I fielded a call about 233 Main Street, which was part of the Matt company.
Yes.
And I think is now a tattoo shop. Oh, he said he just bought the building and has all these questions, so he's gonna come in and do research tomorrow.
That's a
so.
tattoo parlor, oh God.
I don't know, it says tattoos on the side of the building. I don't know if that's what it's becoming or if that's what it was formerly. I didn't ask, I'll have to ask tomorrow.
Okay.
But yeah, there seems to be a lot from people who are purchasing in and around Main Street. Lots of activity going on.
It really is, yeah.
Cool. Well, speaking of art in public places, they just installed these, they're calling them History Under Wraps. So these are graphic wraps that use historic photos from the museum collection to wrap traffic signal boxes around town.
That's kind of neat. Who came up with that idea?
That was, I think, Angela Brill, our Art and Public Places administrator, had seen it somewhere else and said, we should do that in Longmont.
Yeah.
And
that's
so
great.
they did 6 this year, and they'll keep adding, a number every year, because there's hundreds of those, traffic control boxes around town.
Yeah, they're pretty ugly.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, they're much better that way. And there's a virtual tour available on the website if you want
Is
to
there?
know where they all are.
Let's see. Go on down to, they also installed new Art on the Move sculptures around Longmont. Check those out. Under development, so mark your calendars for the museum event of the year. September 7th, the Saturday, the Sunset Soiree. It is our inaugural fundraising event. Will happen in our new courtyard. We'll kick off the courtyard and will be a fundraiser for the capital campaign. It will be one of the biggest events that we will do this year, and we're very excited about taking a big step forward with our fundraising. Under marketing, as was mentioned, we've got the Parkway Food Hall display that'll be going up this coming week. We've got the minifig custom figures that city council members will have next to their nameplates for the month of June. We had a Spanish-speaking volunteer talk about our Picturing the West exhibit on Lale Radio before that exhibit closed down. Some of the departments that aren't represented here are busily working elsewhere. Our exhibits department, the Picturing the West exhibit did close, and they're in the midst of converting that gallery over to build, design, and create with Lego. So that will open up June 1st. And that is all that I will highlight out of the director's report.
I don't have a report. We don't have any unfinished business listed. So for new business, we need to create an interview committee for that.
Yes, so we have 3 applicants for the Museum Advisory Board. Bob, Catlin, and then another Bruce. So I don't know if we can have 2 Bruces. Bruce Katuna, who I have not met or spoken with yet. I did invite him to this meeting as well, but he did not respond. But we will need, by the end of this month, so a fairly short turnaround, we'll need to have a committee interview those 3 applicants and then make recommendations for to City Council. We actually have 4 openings. We have Bob is finishing out his term, plus we have 3 open spots on the board. But if any current board members other than Bob would be willing to serve on the committee, we would appreciate that.
Sure.
Well, thank you. We need at least 2.
I can as well, but I've done it in the past if someone else would like the opportunity.
I could do it, I'll do it. What's the process? Do we meet them face to face or?
Usually do it online.
We've done it via Zoom in the
Yeah.
past,
Okay.
but I know Art and Poet Places did them all in person. So, you know,
So it's up to us.
it's kind of up to you all. What do you prefer?
Okay.
And Joanne will set up the interviews. And, there's a interview packet, right? Kind of questions like that, and
Right.
we can send out the
Can we do
applications.
this by artificial intelligence?
Next year.
Next year. Yeah, next year. Right. So we need more applicants for the 4th position.
So unfortunately, we had one other applicant who had to withdraw because of other commitments. It would have been great. Antonio Lopez was actually a performer, performed here at the museum several times. But,
Was he the guy who did the Scottish?
no, we did send the information about, here's how to apply to the gentleman that came with the proposal to have a bagpipe group
That's
play
right,
here.
right. Yeah.
And didn't hear back, so.
And the deadline, I don't know how firm it is or was. It wasn't in mid-April sometime.
They pushed it back a week, but it's, April was the deadline. So they'll usually do another application round in the fall. So another opportunity to recruit for the ward then. I don't know if we need a motion, but it probably wouldn't hurt to have the board move to have Tom and Bruce as our interview committee.
So we have a motion to have Tom and Bruce serve as our interview
Motion.
committee. Linda?
Is Tom Bruce allowed to vote?
Okay, we have a second from Bob. All in favor?
Thank you.
Okay, and then
Okay,
any other
Yeah.
new business? Do we have any other board comments this time? We have a motion to adjourn. Second. All in favor? Unanimous.